I'm Lisa Fletcher, and you're in the stream. Today, the Hawaiian debate over biotech and genetically modified foods. We look at why protesters in Hawaii want to evict companies like Monsanto from their land. Our digital producer, Malika Bilal, is here keeping an eye on all of your live feedback. Malika, online we're seeing a lot of opposition to GMO crops. Also, people rather annoyed that there's not a lot of disclosure about them.
Exactly. And there's also a fierce debate between whether or not government should make it mandatory to label foods that are genetically modified. On the majority side, though, are those who want it labeled. And this tweet sums it up. Amin Outspoken says, education of the population, along with clear labeling of food packaging, should be a minimum worldwide. Now, for those of you at home, we want to know what you think as well. So join the conversation with the hashtag AJStream.
Joining us in studio is Rachel Pomerantz. She is the health and wellness editor at U.S. News and World Report and has covered the GMO debate in the United States. Rachel, welcome to the stream.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you. What stories are you following? That's a question we ask our online community every day via Facebook. So if you have a story that you think is worthy of a future episode, share it with us. Go to facebook.com/AJStream.
Hi, I'm Noni Mange, an entrepreneur from Kenya, and I am in the stream.
The Hawaiian Islands are a well-known destination for tourists looking for tropical landscapes and natural beauty. But over the years, Hawaii has also become the epicenter over a debate over biotech companies developing genetically modified crops, or GMOs. In recent weeks, Hawaiians have taken to the streets because they believe that companies, including Monsanto and Syngenta and others, are responsible for harming their health and the environment. Residents say open-air testing of pesticides in particular has caused asthma, cancer, and other illnesses. But in Hawaii, GMOs are a large contributor to the state's #1 agricultural export of seed crops. Supporters of biotech advances insist that GMOs are safe. They also say the technology has allowed farmers to increase their crop yields and keep agriculture sustainable for a growing global demand. So, how safe are genetically modified foods? And is the biotech industry helping or hurting Hawaiians? Joining us to talk about these issues is Dustin Barca. He is the protest organizer with the Hawaii GMO Justice Coalition. He is also a professional surfer. Dustin joins us from Kauai. In Boulder, Colorado, we have David Murphy. He is the founder of Food Democracy Now! That's a grassroots anti-GMO organization that calls for reform in the food system. And in Honolulu, we have Alicia Maluafidi. She is the executive director of the Hawaii Crop Improvement Association. That's a trade organization that supports biotech and agricultural sciences in Hawaii. Alicia, David, Dustin, welcome to all of you. Dustin, I want to begin with you. You're the organizer of the protests that we've recently seen in Hawaii. There have been protests against biotech there for years. Why have more people decided to organize and take to the streets this time around?
Well, thanks for having me on the show, first of all. I think the change in knowledge in the streets in recent times has come from just the younger people getting involved and learning what's going on. And, there's a next generation of people that really care about the future of their children and the future of where they live. And, we got concerns. And, just having a younger generation standing up and getting active has brought a whole new side to the movement and has woken a lot of people up on what's going on in our state.
And your concerns are really in two major areas, over spraying the chemicals and over labeling. Kind of explain that to folks who may not be entirely familiar.
Well, for us in Hawaii, we are known as ground zero for chemical testing for the GMO companies. We've kind of become their lab. And, that's the issue. The biggest issue with us right now is what are they spraying? How much are they spraying? And, why are we having die-offs in our ocean and kids getting sick and people getting sick? We have a lot of questions involving the amount of chemicals they're spraying, what they're spraying, and we're not entitled to know any of that information. So that is our biggest concern here in Hawaii.
Alicia, I know that you don't represent any one of the biotech companies, but you are the executive director of their go-to trade organization in Hawaii. Why do you think there's a lack of disclosure, particularly when Hawaiians are demanding it and they're taking to the streets to do it? Why are the companies still holding back?
Well, I don't think it's a matter of disclosure. And in fact, it's a great opportunity to correct the misinformation and the fear-mongering already. The pesticides being used by the biotech companies are the same pesticides being used by farmers all across the world. They're not testing anything new here. There are no experimental pesticide activity going on. These are pesticides that a farmer would use to control insects or disease or virus or weeds. There's nothing experimental about it. What they're doing is they're growing crops that have been approved by the Food and Drug Administration, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They're growing out these crops in nurseries here in Hawaii because they can get 3 to 4 growing seasons here versus in the middle of Iowa in winter. So I'll correct that right now. There is no experimental pesticide activity going on here in Hawaii. But that being said, every single thing is registered and approved by the Environmental Protection Agency as well as the Hawaii State Department of Agriculture. And as a native Hawaiian, I know you're referring to everybody in Hawaii as Hawaiians. I am native Hawaiian. I, more than anybody, would be concerned about our families being raised here in Hawaii and the activities going on within our agricultural community. But the projects being done by the biotech companies who've been here for 50 years is not a concern to me and my family. All
right, Dave Murphy, should it be a concern?
Listen, absolutely. The same companies that are growing experimental crops on the island of Hawaii are the same companies that are growing what they do is they create the seed stock for the biotechnology, the seed biotech industry, and they grow those seeds out on Hawaii. She's talking about they probably use Roundup and Atrazine to control weeds, and then they have probably the BT corn to control the insects. The question is, though, if there is no public disclosure, the people of Hawaii rightfully should be concerned about chemicals being sprayed on their island, on the property near, Hawaii is a beautiful island. It's paradise. And the question is, Monsanto is being leased 1,000 acres near the Kamehameha schools. And the question, and I understand that atrazine has been discovered in the water testing of the school's water.
Explain what atrazine is for people who don't know.
Atrazine is a very broad spectrum herbicide used in agriculture, especially in corn production. And basically what it does, it has in high doses or in doses above normal permitted levels, it can cause changes in the sexual features, hermaphroditic changes in tadpoles and in frogs. And that's been a big problem here in the Midwest. I'm from Iowa, where Hawaii, if you're going to call yourself ground zero for the seed industry and the chemical testing, Iowa is ground zero for biotech industry where those crops are grown out. 97% of soybeans in Iowa are genetically engineered, and over 90% of corn grown in Iowa is genetically engineered. The fact is, the real reason people have concerns is because these companies have not been honest in the past, and there's new and emerging science in the last few years that is showing potential harm. Reuters just has an article this week about a new study showing harm from Roundup and its main chemical component, glyphosate, showing significant potential human health concerns. Mm-hmm. So the chemical industry can talk about how safe their products are, but the fact is the American people have a right to protest to our government and to the Kamehameha School asking for broader protections. I think it's very reasonable when you're having cancer or other, human health problems that are potentially there from these chemicals.
And Rachel, David mentioned new and emerging science, and that's exactly what our community members are weighing in on. Helene is scared about that. She said, personally, I use the rule of caution. So far, a good part of the artificial things humans created have harmful side effects or are toxic either for us, other beings, or the environment. But she has a response from Jude Jackson on Facebook who says, there's nothing inherent in GM crops that makes them more dangerous than conventional conventional agriculture. Now, you've reported on this extensively. Can you weigh in on that argument, and what have you found? Are they inherently dangerous?
Well, we talked earlier about Gregory Jaffe from the Center for Science and Public Interest, and he talked about how the actual science in some of these products removes the DNA. Ultimately, the genetically modified ingredients are not in the final product. They may be part of the seeds and the planting, but in the final product, what you have are similar, biologically similar products.
So it's processed out, like when you're making high fructose corn syrup out of genetically modified corn?
Soybean oil and high fructose corn syrup and a lot of these sugar from sugar beets, these are all processed out, exactly. So in the end of the day, is it fair to say this soybean oil has GMOs and this one doesn't, when in the exact same product, actually they're biologically and chemically the same?
Dave, I know you want to jump in.
Yeah, listen, absolutely. I am going to disagree with Mr. Jaffe from CSPI. I think they're using old scientific methods. When they first introduced these crops 20 years ago, the scientific community has developed very sophisticated testing models to figure out what DNA components from genetically engineered crops are left over. And tests have shown, there was a 2011 study that was in Canada that showed that 93% of pregnant women in this Canadian study had the Bt toxin in their bloodstream while they're pregnant. 83% of the fetal placenta tissue from that study, they also had that Bt toxin. Now, where did that Bt toxin come from? It's from the Bt corn that's being grown and the cottonseed that's being grown widely in the Canada and the U.S., and it's from their diet. The fact is, just because the biotech industry says something is processed out doesn't mean it's true.
Right.
There have been a lot of studies from products that show that the genetically engineered component is left over, and we are consuming that.
Just to be clear, this source that we quoted is actually from a consumer advocacy scientific think tank. So it's not actually, I'm not quoting from the side of the biotech folks, but from a Washington, D.C. based.
Hey, Dustin, in the process of developing these crops, many of which are genetically modified for resistance to weeds or resistance to insects, there's been a lot of open field testing of pesticides. Do you have any evidence of sickness of people that have been around this testing?
Well, here on Kauai, where I live on the west side, where all the majority of the crops are, there's been a lot of illnesses, a lot of kids. There's about 300 yards in between the school and the crops. There's kids falling down in the schools, seizures, bloody noses. Our ecosystem is taking a hit because of the outflow of the rivers. The whole west shore, all of our sea urchins have been washing up dead on the beaches. My friends all dive on the west side. There's thousands of sea urchins dead on our floor, right outside where all the test crops are. The issues are endless, and
Alicia, do you have...
Alicia said she as a native Hawaiian, and she's not concerned for her family. Well, I am a father of 2 kids. I am concerned for my family, and everybody I know is concerned for their families. So I find it sad that you're not concerned about your family.
Alicia, is there, this is anecdotal evidence. It may or may not be connected to the litany of chemicals that are tested on the island, but is there room for investigation here?
Actually, I mean, that's mostly the problem. Is it's anecdotal, but what we've seen over and over again is that these are the same. And first of all, I didn't say I wasn't concerned for my family, only that there is no direct nexus between what these companies are doing and these supposed incidents being linked to consumer health.
Right, but my question is there room for investigation? Should these companies be trying to track this down and see if there is a connection?
Well, I mean, I think you just heard it. If one drop of water, it takes 25 years to make it down to the aquifer. So if you're talking about atrazine levels being, and by the way, the atrazine levels that they've found, tested by the Board of Water on Kauai, are 1 million times less than what would be concerned as a public health and safety issue. State Department of Ag, their pesticide branch, State Department of Health, water quality, pollution, air pollution, all of these state agencies, including the Environmental Protection Agency, has investigated these claims by the activists. And the number one issue I would suggest, if there were so many health issues with the food and with the crops being grown, I would suggest to you that the companies themselves would be absolutely concerned that anything that they were doing would result in those types of health and safety issues. And unfortunately, there is no nexus to what they're doing, and especially if you look at the employees. 2,000 employees working within the industry, 2,000 of them probably closer to the chemicals, to the pesticides, to the crops than anybody else. And they have some of the greatest health and safety records of any agricultural activity that's ever been done. So I would only suggest that although there are concerns by residents, a lot of these residents have moved into agricultural lands, and unfortunately this urban encroachment often results in challenges with right to farm. Issues with
Alicia, hey, hang on. I'm going to pause you there because Rachel has a thought.
Yeah, I was just wanted to ask Alicia, why do you think, assuming that your companies have proven that there's no linkage here between the chemicals being used and consumer safety and health, why do you think there is such contention around these issues? Why do you think that the other side has latched on to GMOs as the supposed cause for cancers and other scares, health scares?
Well, we believe specifically the first group that started in Hawaii, they call themselves sort of the anti-GMO, GMO-free groups. And their only goal in Hawaii is to rid Hawaii of the biotech companies. They've challenged the health and safety of the GMO crops, and unfortunately for them, over 600 studies later and studies by independent agencies and organizations have said that the food is safe and the crops that they're growing are safe. What we believe they're doing now is, well, we can't hit them with the health and safety of the food crops they're growing, so let's go after them for the pesticide use, because they are chemical companies growing these crops, or probably some of them are. And what scares people the most is health and safety. And so what I've said before, these are pesticides that every farmer across the world is using. And they are using them in no more greater numbers than any other farmer. And in fact, because these are nursery crops that get rotated, crops that they can't grow at any point in time more than 7,000 acres of the 25,000 acres in cultivation, they've latched on to what is the scariest thing to people, and that is pesticides. They're killing our people. Our kids are getting sick.
All right, Alicia, I'm going to pause you there. I want to hear from one of our viewers. Many of the protesters have been focusing on Monsanto. This is a clip from a film made by Hawaii Seed, a coalition of anti-GMO grassroots groups. You're going to hear the voice of a woman named Mercy Rich. She's a Molokai resident who says her son became sick from Monsanto chemicals that were tested near her home.
There was a dust storm that came throue Ho'olehua from the fields over here, and shortly after, my son became really sick with a cough that I've never heard before. So I contacted Monsanto. I wanted to know what it was they were spraying, when and where, and the response I got was to not to worry, and that it's safe. I thought, okay, I don't know about that. I need to do my own research. So I continued to research online, and I found a list of chemicals that Monsanto manufactures. All those chemicals that were listed are very, very toxic and can cause detrimental harm to animal life, marine life, and human life. A lot of those chemicals are also banned in different countries in Europe. So it got me thinking, like, why are they continuing to spray these chemicals here on our island when it's banned elsewhere in the world?
Hey, Dave, is it your belief that politics and big business or science are setting the agenda here?
Well, listen, I think it's very obvious to the American people, especially a growing number of people. Listen, why has this movement grown? It's because certain people have made a very specific decision that we're not going to tolerate biotech industry to feed the American public their products unlabeled. And I think Prop 37 was a very big battle between the forces that believe that in a democratic society we should have openness and transparency in the food products that we're consuming, And I think
And we just want to let's just explain what Prop 37 is. It was a proposition in California that would have required the labeling of genetically modified foods. Dave, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the anti-GMO campaign was outspent by Monsanto about 5-1. Wasn't it like 49 million to 9 million?
Listen, just real quick. This is not an anti-GMO campaign. This is a campaign for our basic democratic rights and to regain our democratic system and to protect our environment and family farmers. These corporations don't have a right to pollute our land. They don't have a right to sell their products to us unlabeled. They already label their products in 64 other countries around the world. Why not the United States? Now, it's very easy for someone to say we're latching on to the chemicals because that's the only thing we can hit them on, or we're latching on whatever. This is a very broad movement. Has doctors, mothers, lawyers from all across the country that are involved in it. 6 million voters in California voted to label genetically engineered foods. The people in Hawaii are concerned about the health of their children. These crops, are experimental crops, are being grown so only a few hundred yards from their schools. They're having negative impact from these chemicals. The fact is, these chemicals are toxins. They kill insects. That's what they're designed to do. And if you're not having public disclosure to what chemical is being sprayed that day, or what the chemical load is on that crop, how can any mother find out how her children is sick? The reason Monsanto doesn't want to do what is required in California, if you spray pesticides on a crop, you have to register that and the amount with the state. Monsanto doesn't want that because they know there's human health problems from their chemicals and they don't want to be liable for that.
And we heard about some human health problems a little bit earlier in the video comment from Mercy. She gave us a follow-up, and Dustin, I'd like you to have a listen to this.
I initially wanted disclosure of information regarding the names of pesticides being used and sprayed in these areas. But now, what I would want for Monsanto to do is to remove these fields from all residential areas and to eliminate spraying of any type of chemical or pesticide that may be harmful to the health of the people that live in these areas.
So Dustin, she says she wants them removed, and you earlier said that chemical testing on the island is just 100 yards away from your house. So is that what you want as well?
That's definitely what we want. Our main concern is the future health of our island. Everything we love is in danger. You know what I mean? Here in Hawaii, 3 things that are the most important thing in the world to us are family, our land, and our ocean. And all of those are at risk right now. And that's why we're making so much noise, because in Hawaii, that's everything to us, and that's the big issue. No matter what island you're on, if they're farming there, we're dealing with the same issues, and it's close to the heart, and that's why we're so involved and so passionate about making a difference and getting these guys out of here.
Rachel, we've got about a minute left.
Yeah.
Where do you see this going? Is this going to be a state-by-state situation where it gets on the ballot measures, where there's an initiative process, or do you think something larger is going to happen?
I think it's both. I think it's already happening in several states. I think we have the Environmental Working Group says it's something like 26 states that are already taking up ballots. This Prop 37 that David referred to has spawned kind of it's spawned legislation all over, states everywhere. And in addition to that, there's a massive campaign being organized also with Environmental Working Group called Just Label It, and they've been sending petitions. I think 1 million citizen petitions have been, 1 million signatures have been reached on this petition to go press for legislation to get the FDA to push for labeling of genetically engineered food. So I think it's happening in tandem.
I'm going to pause you there because we're out of time for the main program, but we're going to continue the conversation in our post show. It's streamed at aljazeera.com. So join us there now. just going to keep chatting right now. Welcome back. I'm Lisa Fletcher. This is the Stream's online post show. We're talking about the debate in Hawaii over genetically modified foods. GMOs have become a huge industry for the state, but some of the residents say it's come at the cost of their environment and their health. I want to get back to the conversation with Rachel Pomerantz from U.S. News and World Report. She covers these issues, and we were just talking about the impact of Prop 37 in California. Was it 37 or 39?
37.
37.
49.
$49 million. Yeah. So the impact and the fallout from that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this is just kind of taking on a life of its own now. Prop 37, it was sort of like for the anti-GMO folks, they may have lost the battle but are winning the war, because it has fed a huge amount of efforts, campaigns nationally and in communities all over the country to try to learn more about GMOs and get them out of their foods.
Mm-hmm. Dustin, what's next in terms of the Hawaii GMO Justice Coalition? Are you going to keep up with the protests? What's your next move?
Yeah, we got protests. We're working on a lot of informational pamphlets. Real easy to read for from a 10-year-old to a 80-year-old can understand. Really waking up the working class people in Hawaii who don't have time to go on the internet and don't have time to read up on what's going on, and kind of just, letting them make their choice once they get the information, and, if they want to get involved and join us.
Hey, Dustin, explain for people the land use issues that are associated with this in Hawaii.
The land use issues?
Yeah, in terms of the amount of land that's being used by the biotech companies versus the amount of land used for Hawaii's own sustainability. Okay,
well, here on Kauai, they have 12,400 acres owned or leased by GM companies. And, on a small island like Kauai, that is pretty detrimental when they're using as much pesticides as they're using. And that's a lot of land for a small island like Kauai. So that is a big issue to us. I don't know the exact how much is organic, how much is GM, but our goal is not as much against something as for a better future for Hawaii. We're not so against agriculture and their style of agriculture. We're just working for a healthier future, So if they don't want to tell us what they're spraying, they don't want to give us that information, that makes us ask questions, Everything's becoming transparent within our government, making all these bad decisions. They're kind of doing it for us, letting out all the information, you know what I mean?
And Dave, I want you to pick up on the transparency that Dustin is just talking about, because one thing we haven't even really gotten a chance to talk about in detail is labeling. Ryan on Twitter says, if it's safe, why aren't they willing to label it? We have also a Facebook comment from Kevin who says, it isn't a debate over whether GM crops are safe or harmful. The fundamental debate should focus on whether consumers have the right to be informed. My assertion is yes, and then one more, because this is definitely on people's minds. It's a video comment. Dave, have a listen.
Hi, I'm Lola Mohammed Nur from the Twin Cities, Minnesota, and I absolutely do believe that you have a right to know whether or not your food is genetically modified, regardless of where you're from or your geographic location. If you look at European countries, they clearly label their foods as genetically modified or not, but we don't have that here in the U.S., so I just think it's a matter of the right to be informed, the right to be able to make healthy decisions and know what you're putting into your body.
So Dave, you were the co-chair of Proposition 37. What are your thoughts on labeling?
Yeah, listen, absolutely. I think labeling is a very fundamental basic right that we need to have transparency in our food system. And the thing is that Monsanto, the biotech industry, they can say their product is safe. And that's our right to claim that. The fact is the studies that they submit for the approval of their crops, those are corporate science. It's not independent peer-reviewed science. The real problem that's happened is that in the 1990s, when the Food and Drug Administration was trying to oversee what the regulatory structure was going to be, the FDA political appointees under the Bush administration chose to override their own scientists who claimed that this is a new technology and it absolutely introduces new risk and potential risk. the very act of inserting foreign genes into a crop or an animal potentially increases toxicants in that food resulting food or allergenistic responses. And there have been incidences of allergic responses from GM crops. But the real fact is, what we are arguing as Food Democracy Now! And a broad coalition of groups with Just Label, an environmental working group, we believe we have a right to know what's in our food. It's a fundamental democratic right. There is no free market if there's not transparency.
Rachel, I have a question for you.
Yeah. Okay.
We're talking a lot about labeling, and a lot of consumers are pushing for it, but do you think that labeling is going to ultimately empower consumers?
Right, I think that's exactly where we're of the same mind, because that was the same question I was thinking about, that there is a lot of confusion right now between all the different kinds of labels that are out there, whether it's natural or organic, wild caught or farm raised, all of these things. GMO adds another layer to that conversation, and I'm not sure how informed consumers are to then take the next step, except to say maybe that it doesn't sound like a good thing to have the genetically, whether that's fair or not. But I will say that it's very clear that this science has been around not long enough, let's say 17 years, I think, not long enough to do the kind of really long-term investigation that we're able to really tell. I think people are fair to say that we don't really know beyond that. It's 20 years is not the longest amount of sample size for data. We even know, I don't know if you know, Michael Pollan talks about in his one of his books about a carrot, for example. There's so many different interactions just in one single carrot that you can't even, does the beta carotene, is that what is good for your eyes, or is it the beta carotene interacting with something else that's already in the carrot? There's so much that goes on in just the most simple piece of food. So I think there's just a lot of unknowns, and all of these labels are attempts to educate people, but the question is, as you say, how much does that really inform us, other than giving us more information we're not sure what to do with?
You said that there's a lot of unknowns, and that seems to be kind of the prevalent sentiment. Abra on Twitter says, people in Hawaii have serious complaints. It would only make sense to investigate the claims other than to dispute. And Dustin, I'd venture to say that's exactly what you feel?
That's exactly what we feel. We're very concerned, with bills like the Monsanto Protection Act going through and stuff. It really makes everybody in America question what's going on, because if these people have nothing to hide, then why are they passing all these bills and pushing for all these bills, you know what I mean? And it really makes us as Americans question our government and question what's going on,
Rachel, you want to clarify what he's talking about, the Monsanto Protection Act?
Oh yeah, you're talking about the Monsanto rider that was on some legislation recently that was to, I'm not entirely, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but it was basically provided some protection not to go after,
the makers of genetically modified.
I think Dave could give you a good breakdown of what that is.
Oh good, thank you, Dave.
Sure, yeah, so there was a provision snuck into a must-pass continuing resolution bill. It was basically a budget bill that the government is now managing our budget by crisis, and so it's only a 6-month bill. And Senator Roy Blunt from Missouri, that's Monsanto's home state, he admits to sneaking this provision. This is called a rider, which is unrelated to the main contents of the bill. And in this case, what it did is it stripped away the right of judicial review, and it basically says that the Secretary of Agriculture cannot stop a crop from being planted while it is under review in a court case. And that's because Center for Food Safety and other groups have filed, petitions or court cases against the USDA, trying to get them to halt the planting of GMO, Roundup Ready sugar beets and also Roundup Ready alfalfa.
Right.
That passed, unfortunately, that passed, I think, by a vote in the Senate of 73 to 26, and many people are claiming they didn't know about it, but we had their phones ringing off the hook for the week before that. At Food Democracy Now! We had 300,000 people sign a letter asking for President Obama, to veto that or to issue a signing statement on the Section 735, which is basically a corporate handout to Monsanto.
Dave, I'm going to have to stop you there because we're out of time in the program, but thank you to all of our guests for joining us today. On our next program, we're going to take a look at the millennials. How is this generation's young adults leveraging technology to find personal and economic success? So send us your thoughts and your questions on that. Until then, we'll see you online.